Okay, there we go.
Not again.
I enjoyed that.
That was incredible, wasn't it?
Amazing.
I said to my friends, we've got Stella Duffy on the podcast, and they were just like, what the fuck?
I know.
I was just like, I know.
I meant to be at a birthday lunch and I was just like, I'm sorry I can't go, but Stella Duffy's on the podcast.
Yeah.
There's not really much anyone can say to that. This is what we're doing, and there we go. I mean, all of our guests are incredible. Aren't we so damn lucky that we have all these guests for the past 3 years? Well, nearly 3 and a bit years, isn't it? I suppose. We learn something every time from everybody. I go away and each time I'm just like, my God, so much that people bring to us and to listeners. It's incredible. And that was amazing. The threads, I love this analogy of these threads and the honesty in everything.
That story, her story is so powerful, isn't it? And I was like, I could feel myself go, oh, I'm going. As I mean, it's just you never ever know what somebody's carrying around with them, do you? Even if it's out on the web, that the web, this happened and this happened, this happened. Even like still be, you still carry it around with you, don't you? Yeah, amazing.
I particularly like the way that, I think what I was gobsmacked at was the way that she could describe and verbalize all these things that are in my head that, my limited vocabulary doesn't allow me to do. So that I was just sitting there going, wow, that's awesome. That's great. Look at that. So that, wow. Oh, I've never thought about it like that. Because as she was talking, I'm actually reliving that TV show a lot. I'm just thinking, that happened. What she talked there, that happened. That's exactly right. That happened. And yeah, it was, and it played on a feeling I had today, actually, editing the men's episode from last week. Felt quite privileged. I feel very privileged to actually, as you both know, to do this. But I feel very privileged that I get to edit. I have the, for want of a better word, I have the control over the way that our episodes are perceived. And that's why I'm so very, very reluctant to cut anything out, because I thought each one is special.
Yeah.
And just listening to Stella today actually made me think, maybe I'm, I think it's really hard to explain. So I'm sorry, but it made me feel like that I can realize I'm on the other side, if you will. Thinking about how I was thinking today, and then listen to her saying, you've got to pick these things up and they make you realize, when you start talking about it. And yeah, so it's actually been quite a really, really thought-provoking episode for me, considering the way that I was thinking today. So don't know if that makes any sense. It sort of does in my head. There you go. Scary place in there.
I don't know. What I took away from it and what I loved was the way Stella went, do you know what? We may be getting older. We may not have had the life we wanted. None of us have, but we can still add value. And the thing that stuck with me was what she said about menopause and the way different people experience it based on the value that society puts on them. And I was like, I've heard it before, that actually, depending what culture you come from, you don't necessarily get the same, list of, I hesitate to use the word symptoms because I know she didn't want to use the word symptoms, but how it manifests. And that fascinates me because I find myself, actually, I am kind of going through it, but my symptoms are very, very different to my mum's. My mum had the whole kit and caboodle, and I'm like, I don't have the same mindset about it. I still know that I add value. I still am contributing, and had it not been for my childlessness, I don't necessarily think that I would feel that way. Do you see what I mean?
Mm.
So I took a lot away from what she said.
I feel oddly different in that I suppose I feel like it's sort of I think it's like a robbing. I feel like I've been robbed of the years that I should have had, perhaps because I was so worried about aging, because age and IVF and viability of eggs is all inextricably linked together. And I felt like I was old before my time, because at 44, your eggs are scrambled. The fact that actually I'm still not yet menopausal, not even perimenopausal yet, makes me think, was that right? Or was that just kind of like you're 44, we've going to put a line under that, therefore, you're not viable? Would it have worked still? And there's a kind of a robbing there, I think, also with the kind of the mental health as well, and kind of going through a period of being extremely overweight and drinking and eating all of the wrong things, particularly with drinking and eating stuff that I now know absolutely was completely wrong, now that I can't tolerate gluten anymore. Dairy is an issue. I think as that punishment as well, because you become sort of already invisible, because anyone who's overweight is invisible. I think particularly women, I think you become very invisible. So you end up sort of feeling sort of now at 52, I think, sort of like, I've had a learned experience. I think that's probably, maybe that's what it is. It's not wisdom, it's a learned experience. And I kind of want to go and sort of, just fall around a few bars and have some fun and reclaim probably about my 30s and my 40s, when I was kind of going through IVF or grieving IVF or grieving what I didn't have. And I lost myself in that process. And it's that coming out of it the other side and thinking, oh, yeah, I've got a value. You're right. I think it is that, Sarah. It's having a value. But I think the value in the podcast, in the full stop, and the privilege of meeting the people that we meet, including Stella and all the other guests, there is a value in what we're doing, and starting to recognize that we have a, as you say often, Michael, it's the place at the table.
Yeah.
But that's a hell of a journey to go through, and it is absolutely so painful, genuinely, hand on heart. On my birthday this year, I stood in the field and I shouted at the world and told it how much I fucking hated the world. I tried to commit suicide on my birthday once, because I just didn't want to be there anymore, because it's a milestone, it's a marker, it's there, it's big, it's there. This is your birthday, you're meant to be happy. You're meant to be happy on your birthday, but I hate birthdays. One day I'm going to be like, I aim, my life goal now is to have a birthday I enjoy, and I was actually going on holiday this year, we were staying in gatehouse, cost a small fortune, really. And the Tuesday was better. Tuesday, the Wednesday, the Thursday, even coming home was fine. I needed to shout in the field and be angry, and that's okay. Go shout in the fields. I mean, I don't advocate shouting at people, but I just stood in a field and I yelled at everything, and it took me a while to get my voice back, but it was good. It felt good, but
I think that's kind of what Stella was talking about, isn't it? When she was not, you can use the word journey. It's such a cliche, isn't it? But
it's never linear, is it? It's never linear.
No, it's all over the place. I mean, I hear what you say about those lost years. I lost my 20s and my 30s to my mental health. Yeah. And it's really tough when you think, well, there were some good times in there, but I don't remember an awful lot because there was an awful lot of bad times. So I think that's really hard. And, I've been suicidal as well. And that's really shit. So for me, I think the fact that I do feel I add value now is a big deal. And I take a lot of pride in it, the fact that we do this. You know, I've met people, I've met bloody Stella Duffy, for Christ's sake. You know, it's just like,
I get really emotional, sorry.
that's all right. No, I think it's amazing.
Crikey.
Yeah, I'm feeling a bit not quite sure how I feel. Listened to both you and Stella about birthdays. I'm sure I've talked about Vicky's birthday and being told she was pregnant on the birthday, and she feels very much the same. It's about I can't celebrate my birthday, and I want to celebrate her. So it, you know, and it's, I don't know. I'm not quite sure how I feel right now, but it's made me think about that. It's made me think about how I should behave at that point in time.
Yeah.
Because that bull-headed part of me says we will make it happy, and you know, if I wasn't so overweight, I'd probably put myself in a bow and say, look, you know, make it happen. But I wouldn't look good right now.
Did you just say put yourself in a bow?
In a bow, yeah, put a bow.
Oh, well, that stopped us both crying.
Where is this bow going?
Yeah.
Wrap myself up in a bow. Maybe that's better. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So it's given me food for thought. Think about how I behave.
You're brilliant, Michael. You're so brilliant. You are just brilliant for all that you do, for all that we all do. It's just brilliant. God, do you know what I feel like? I've got my mug here. This is my UK listen. I don't know if you have this in Australia, or it might come to you at some point. I know you've got Bake Off there, but Great Pottery Throwdown. Oh, Christina with the there was a thing, a Great Pottery Showdown. Keith Brymer Jones always cries. He says, "Oh, it's just brilliant. I just love it." How the hell do you get emotional at pottery? So this is my mug. This is my Keith Brymer Jones mug, and it says FFS on it, for fuck's sake. Anyway, so it's sort of my reminder.
It does make me laugh.
I could have had any mug that actually, Christmas or birthday present. This is a birthday present, and my dearest other half said, "You can have any mug you want." You know, I just said, "Well, you choose one." You go into the store, Keith Brymer Jones's store, then you've got Goddess. You've got some parental ones on there, so ignore those, but you've got Goddess and all these sorts of other stuff. And I thought, well, I'll have one of those. I'll let him choose. Anyway, so he got me the one with "for fuck's sake" on it, which I think sums everything up. But yeah, crying over pottery, and I'm just thinking I just sounded like I'm riffing now. Sorry, everyone, this is completely pointless, but it was that whole idea of kind of what creates that emotion, and just going, "Oh, we're bloody brilliant." I'm like Keith Brymer Jones and Great Pottery Throwdown, I suppose. But in one of the episodes, it wasn't one of the finals, but it was semi-final, quarter-final, something like that one of the potters put together. They had to do a piece of pottery that reflected their life, them. And one of the potters, lady called Christina, I think parent, I think so. Again, I didn't watch all of the series, but I believe that she was. But she had breast cancer. And I said at the beginning of the episode, we're talking, and Kenny said to me, "Oh, my other half said, well, what would you do?" And I said, "Well, I would probably have something like a piece of pottery that would be a shape, female shape, but it would have a hole in it. But actually, I would want to turn it into a planter. I think it would be a planter in my garden. I put kind of plants in it. Maybe it'd be a cactus, something a bit prickly, but you know, it would be something living within the space where there was a loss." And what this lady actually did was created a piece of pottery that was absolutely beautiful. I mean, the whole episode, I was in floods of tears watching this thing, because she created it with the hole because she'd had breast cancer. And it was just so absolutely moving. But it's perhaps, maybe I'm riffing again, but one of the things that perhaps comes from the podcast and from what our conversations is how we reframe and redefine what we've been through, which feels like something I feel like I've learned a lot today. That perception of wisdom and being older and redefining our life experiences are invaluable. They're not, we're not on pedestals. I would never put myself, with no disrespect to either of you, I never put either of you on the pedestal. I value you, but I don't think we ever. I think it would be just, I don't think any of us should ever be in this community on pedestals, but actually, because then you start to get a little bit awestruck, and we were all a little awestruck today, but it's being, do that, you start to sort of treat things as gospel, and we're all making mistakes, we're all fucking it up, aren't we, really?
Yeah. Well, it's life, isn't it? It's fucking it up and carrying on, isn't it? But
I do that on a regular basis.
I ditto. But no, it's kind of, I think the whole aging thing, as I said, lost a lot of my 20s and 30s, and now I'm just like, fuck it. I've just got to get comfortable with myself. It's not going to get, it's not like a Benjamin Button. I can go backwards, is it? If I'm, I've done a lot of work on myself. I've become a counsellor. In actual fact, I think I feel better now than I ever have been. I would like to be slightly slimmer, but I went out the other day. I went and did some training for my other business, and I wore DMs, leggings, and a tunic. And I was like, well, if you've got a problem with that, I have no fucks to give. That's kind of where I am now. So I
think that's it, isn't it? There was something I read the other day. Someone was worrying about what they had to wear when they were in their 30s or 40s. I forget what it was. And I don't feel like I'm a traditional person. I'm not quite sure what to wear. And I forget even where I read it. Probably on Twitter, something like that. And I thought, do people think about that? Because I literally I don't have a uniform, but I don't think about that. It's not, I am who I am. And it's kind of largely kind of what's comfortable. But, we were in this very remarkable thing when I go back to my grandparents, and they kind of dressed like their parents, It'd be really hard. Some of these pictures that you see of past generations, and it's just hard to identify who's the father and who's the son, because they're all wearing the same clothes, Yeah. And actually the freedom to get to the age that we are, and to wear, as you and I do, Sarah, DMs. So I have to say, my DMs, I haven't worn them for a while because I've barely been anywhere outside the slippers. Wore some last week away and thought, God, I need to break them all in again.
No.
Oh, I don't want to do that because it hurt the first time. I don't want to do it. So anyway.
But no, what an episode.
Yeah. Quite amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And for someone to go through, it's a very, I knew it would be a good one when you just think about who Stella Duffy is, her experiences, the things that have happened to her. I could have sat there for hours.
Yeah, easy.
I don't think I think it's having the power, the bravery, I think, and to actually be able to go and speak out about these things. And I know we've talked about it in the past in the podcast, and equality, but also rights, sharing stories about, the narrative around, particularly, we kept talking again at Mother's Day and International Women's Day, but about how International Women's Day, as Jodie rightly said in the Gateway Women commentary on that it's not International Mother's Day. I think it got balanced a little bit better this year. It felt less pro-natal, I think, because we were all perhaps more aware of it going to happen, that it would happen, that there would be this uprising of tenuous links on LinkedIn and momtrepreneur and all those other kind of words that pop up, but actually evidencing, and that was kind of what I put on the full stop social media, was that these are the women that also matter, that don't have children, but we still have a place at the table. We still need to be considered in International Women's Day, and it's not enough for companies or brands to go, yay, here are women, and we've got this many, and we employ them. There was the wonderful pay gap app, which if you haven't seen it on Twitter, then go and look it up, because it actually, the people behind that retweeted IWD brand or business comments reporting the median pay gap between men and women in their businesses. And I think St John's Ambulance was one of the rare ones that came out where men and women were paid equally. In fact, I think women might be paid more in St John's Ambulance, but for pretty much everything, it was, the difference was shocking. In some instances, we're talking 60-70%. We're talking an awful big gap between men and women's pay. But it's also not necessarily about the, well, it is about the pay. Of course it's about the pay. But there's an awful lot of companies that go out there and go, oh, well, we've got a maternity policy. Yeah, we celebrate women. Woo. And okay, where's the infertility policy? Where's the discussion about equality for childlessness? And another conversation that had popped up recently as well was the difficulties that men have in asking for flexible working, particularly men who are unmarried or are married without children or are in relationships and marriages and partnerships with other men. And they don't feel that they can ask for flexible working because it's been largely commandeered by parents. And it's not enough. It's a slight digression. What I was trying to say was that IWD isn't enough to say we have a maternity policy. And then I started riffing on about men, which is not obviously appropriate, but you know, it's that whole disparity, I think, between, you know, it's not enough to say just one thing and evidence one thing. You need to evidence everything. And if you haven't evidenced the fact that there needs to be an infertility policy and a conversation about childlessness and that flexible working is for everybody, then actually that's a really kind of poor company to work for. It's terrible.
Yeah, but not unusual, unfortunately.
Sadly not.
No.
And also that whole thing about going into business, you must find as well, Sarah. I think it's that the whole idea is that we've all gone into business because we're doing it for the kids. A whole episode about that we could do.
Yeah, don't get me started.
Yeah.
We'd be here all day.
Yeah, we would indeed. Yes.
But yeah. Wow. Oh, you're on mute, Michael. Well, I could lip
Probably
read that.
just as well. This is a video. Just be warning you.
Oh yeah. Whoops. So
we don't swear.
it was really interesting. On International Women's Day, there was a woman put a post on that blog post that I did for the Diversity Council of Australia, which I did share on our Insta, that she had never felt more alone on International Women's Day. That was quite an eye-opener because of because it's all around parents, and that was quite sobering. But on a more positive note, in May, June, I can't remember what it is, but the Diversity Council of Australia are actually going to be hosting an event to discuss childlessness in the workplace. So that's going to be really awesome. So we've got a meeting on Thursday, I think it is, where we're going to discuss more about it and how we're going to do it. So that is a big coup for us in Australia.
That's huge.
It is.
It's massive, isn't it?
It is. It is. So the group I've mentioned before, Childlessness Australia, we are working with the Diversity Council of Australia to be the go-to organisation that they'll come to when the topic of childlessness needs to be raised. So see where that goes.
That's really important because it could set a standard, I think, for other countries. It's the same with the work that Sarah and Judy are doing as well from the previous episode as well. It's important to that this information is shared so that it becomes a standard. I despair over this country. It's geared so much towards parents, I think, by the nature of the government and the definition in all political parties, all of them, not just the government, but of the definition of family and what that means. And as much as we'd like it to be inclusive and it means all people and all families, all diversities, it absolutely doesn't when you dig deeper. But if it's happening in other parts of the world and it sets a blueprint out, that information can be shared and used in the way that the work that Judy and Sarah have created as well. Sounds like it's a period of change and of open conversation over there now.
Well, it's early days, but I think it won't be long before we can sort of officially announce who we are, because we're realizing that it doesn't have to be perfect, but as long as people know that there is a group of people wanting to take this further, then we'll get more members, and the work that we'll be able to do will steamroll, and that snowball will be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So yeah, we're all quite excited. We realise that we're probably the only country in the world that's doing this. So we're very mindful that what we're doing, others will probably want to know about. So we're keeping good notes as well, right, so that we've got something to give the rest of the world.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's nearly half an hour, I think. Is it?
I've no idea. I wasn't watching, but wow, what something to end on, isn't it? It's huge news.
It's big news.
Yeah, we're really excited about it. Really
So
excited.
should be. Yeah.
And,
leading the charge.
Michael Hughes, TV star, podcast presenter, and campaigner and speaker.
Well, no, I'm part of a group of people that are doing this.
So the campaigner.
Still, yeah.
Yeah.
It's really exciting, and it's really fulfilling. It's all those wonderful things, and that's why everyone's there. Every person that comes along says, I want to make a difference for those who come behind us, so, and I think our community is the only one that can do that.
I think that's it. There's very few areas where people haven't made a footprint already, but sometimes those footprints aren't made particularly well.
And the great thing is that we've got a male and female perspective. So in our last meeting, it was probably on 50-50 with male and female. So that's also really encouraging. So we've got some guys down here in Australia who are they're very, very passionate about this as well. And Russell, who you met last episode, Berenice, he's one of them.
Fantastic. Right. I'm really pleased to hear that. He's a very, very good speaker. I learned an awful lot from what he was doing as well. Very, very important conversation there, I'm sure.
Yes,
there
it
we
is.
Go.
Right.
So the podcast, Full Stop Podcast, this video is freely available on YouTube, and is the previous one, and possibly the next one. We got to just wait and find out when we get to the point where we've created the CIC. Once the CIC is taken shape and agreed, then these videos will be then moved to our Patreon page, because we will be then asking for donations, contributions, membership to the podcast in order to help the future funding. But this one will be, and the previous one certainly will be, freely available on YouTube. Disclaimer, put that in, just
I still feel uncomfortable. It's
uncomfortable,
but it's necessary.
But it was necessary because otherwise we can't keep going, and we need to keep going. because it turns out that what we're doing is quite important, apparently.
Oh, well, our numbers are telling us so.
They are indeed, yeah. We've broken some big milestones in the last month on terms of listenership and downloads, but also the social media as well, which has been really important, because social media is the hardest one, I think, to crack in some ways, because people can listen in privacy. And just to let people that are watching the podcast know, we don't know who exactly is listening to our podcast. We don't have that level of detail. No podcast does. We don't know where you are. We know what country you're in, but we don't actually know where you specifically are. It's all complete. That data isn't available at all, even if we wanted it. But social media is difficult, because I think it's very hard to write a comment on the podcast material, because it's acknowledging perhaps something that maybe people don't necessarily want to acknowledge right now. And we appreciate the comments we do get, and we appreciate that we are reaching a very wide audience. Can see that some of our recent posts on Facebook have reached thousands and thousands and thousands, and that is really lovely to see. And I hope that what we're posting is helping people too. So thank you.
And I just want to, before we go, just want to say a big hello, shout out to our listener or listeners in Utah, because that has actually in the last couple of weeks exploded. So whoever you are in Utah, thank you.
Oh,
and
wow.
hello.
Wow,
That's
hello.
I'll keep an eye on these things.
You do indeed. And also
Yep.
just to say, we're thinking of people who have been affected by the conflicts all across the world at the moment, including Ukraine, but all the conflicts across the world too. And just say we're thinking of our listeners that are affected as well. Now, that's a very difficult situation across the world, and one that we can't ignore.
Very much so.
Yeah.